In the days before grocery stores and supply chains, there was a tree that saved villages from hunger. It didn't come from a laboratory, and it didn't need fertilizer. It stood on hilltops and in hedgerows, dropping brown shells like gifts every autumn. Children would scramble to collect them. Women would grind them into flour. Men would build their barns from its rot-proof wood. For centuries, this tree was so reliable, so productive, that people called it the bread tree. Today, most of us only meet it in a song about roasting chestnuts on an open fire. But long before that tune was written, the chestnut fed civilizations. It gave the Roman legions starch for their marches, provided Corsican peasants with the basis of their polenta, and saw Appalachian families through lean winters when nothing else would grow. A single mature chestnut could produce thousands of nuts. Forests of these trees once stretched from the Atlantic to the Mississippi. 1 in every 4 trees in the Appalachian Mountains was a chestnut. Indigenous tribes tended orchards of them. Early settlers built their railroads with chestnut ties and pounded the nuts into meal. Each fall, buckets of fluorescent green burrs carpeted the forest floor, and whole communities turned out to gather them. The nuts were dried, ground, and stored, forming a year-round supply of carbohydrates. They were, quite literally, bread that grew on a tree. Nature doesn't name her creations after kings, but if any plant deserved a crown, it was Castanea, the chestnut. The agronomist J. Russell Smith once described chestnuts as corn that grows on trees. In the Old World, they were called arbre à pain, the bread tree, because they produced a starchy nut that could be turned into flour and kept hungry mountain villages alive. In Tuscany and Corsica, polenta wasn't always cornmeal. Before maize arrived from the Americas, Italian polenta was made with chestnut flour. Chestnut flatbreads, fritters, and cakes were the backbone of diets in the Apennine and Pyrenees. An anthropologist interviewing elderly Corsicans in the 1940s discovered that some had never tasted wheat bread. They had eaten only chestnut bread. Spain's Galicia held festivals to celebrate the harvest of chestnuts because, before corn and potatoes, the nuts were an important part of the Spanish diet. In mountain villages throughout the Mediterranean, people called chestnut trees their tree of life. Nutritionally, chestnuts are closer to whole grains than to other nuts. They are unique among nuts for containing vitamin C and provide significant fiber and complex carbohydrates while being very low in fat. A 100-gram serving contains roughly 30 grams of carbohydrates, about 15 grams of fiber, balanced protein, and only a trace of fat. They are naturally low in sugar and sodium and have a low glycemic index, meaning they release energy slowly. Their nutrient profile looks more like brown rice than a typical nut, but with one crucial difference. A handful of chestnuts provides vitamin C, B vitamins, potassium, iron, and magnesium. For mountain farmers with no access to citrus, that vitamin C made the difference between health and scurvy. Unlike maize, which lacks accessible niacin unless it is treated with alkali, chestnuts provide a complete set of micronutrients without special processing. They may be sweet when roasted, but they are not candy. They are staple food. The American chestnut took this promise and made it giant. At the turn of the 20th century, these trees towered 100 feet tall and 5 feet wide. It has been said that a squirrel could travel from Maine to Georgia without touching the ground, hopping from chestnut branch to chestnut branch. Estimates put their number in the billions. A single mature tree could produce up to 6,000 nuts in a year, an astonishing bounty that fed humans and wildlife alike. Poor farmers gathered nuts to eat and to sell. They fattened pigs and cattle on them. Native American tribes burned competing species to encourage chestnut orchards. The wood was straight, rot-resistant, and strong. It built homes, barns, and railway ties. These trees were not rare delicacies. They were a pillar of the eastern North American ecosystem and economy. People didn't plant chestnuts every year. They didn't need to. A tree planted by a father would feed his grandchildren. Why then do we not rely on chestnuts today? Why are we spending billions of dollars breeding drought-tolerant corn and soybeans while the perfect perennial starch already exists? The answer involves pests, colonization, and the geometry of industrial agriculture. In Europe, the first blow to the bread tree came not from blight, but from empire. After 1492, Spanish and Portuguese ships carried maize and potatoes back from the Americas. These American crops were marvels. Maize yielded well on poor soils, and potatoes could feed 3 times as many people per acre as wheat. European governments urged farmers to plant them. In Italy, cornmeal gradually replaced chestnut flour in polenta because maize produced a quick harvest on the valley floors. In Galicia and elsewhere, the arrival of corn and potatoes relegated chestnuts to festivals rather than daily fare. The bread tree went from staple to seasonal treat, not because it stopped feeding people, but because new crops promised faster returns. The second blow was a plague. In 1904, a fungal disease hitchhiked on imported Asian trees and appeared on a chestnut in the Bronx Zoo. The disease hardly harmed Asian chestnuts, but it was catastrophic for the American species. Within a few decades, chestnut blight swept through the eastern forests and killed an estimated 4 billion trees. Trees sprouted from stumps, only to be girdled by cankers and die back again. By the 1950s, the giant chestnut forests of Appalachia were gone. Where families once gathered buckets of nuts, only sprouts remained. It is considered one of the worst ecological disasters in modern history. Meanwhile, European chestnut groves suffered from ink disease and neglect as people abandoned the mountains for cities. The bread tree retreated to the margins, not because it failed, but because human systems changed around it. Those human systems were being reorganized by machines. In 1701, Jethro Tull invented the seed drill, which allowed farmers to plant seeds in straight, evenly spaced rows. It was brilliant technology, but it required uniformity. The seed drill worked best with annual crops like wheat, barley, and later, maize. Trees and shrubs don't fit in neat rows or respond to annual plowing. The geometry of the machine favored plants that live one season and start from seed the next. Then, in the 19th century, John Deere's steel plow turned prairie grasslands into farmland. The plow sliced through shallow annual roots with ease, but perennial root systems, like those of chestnuts and prairie grasses, resisted the blade. Deep roots that held soil together were suddenly a problem because they broke machinery. The early 20th century added tractors and combines. Everything about industrial agriculture, from planting to harvesting, was designed for annual row crops. Orchards, hedgerows, and nut trees were labeled inefficient, not because they failed to feed people, but because they did not conform to the machines' straight lines. As machines reshaped the fields, capitalism reshaped the marketplace. A perennial crop that lasts decades is a terrible product if your business is selling seeds. In the 1920s, the hybrid seed industry exploded. Companies like Pioneer and DeKalb realized that annual crops create recurring revenue. If farmers plant hybrid corn, they have to buy new seed every spring because saving seed doesn't produce the same yields. Selling annual seeds is like selling a subscription. Selling a tree is like selling a lifetime membership. Perennial chestnut orchards might feed families for 50 years, but they don't require yearly purchases of seed, fertilizer, pesticides, and fuel. Modern corn, by contrast, is dependent on synthetic nitrogen and herbicides. Hybrid varieties bred after the Second World War promised enormous yields if you fed them chemicals, tilled the soil, and kept out competitors. Farmers who adopted them saw bushel counts soar, but became locked into a cycle of debt, reliant on agrochemical corporations for seeds and inputs. By the 1950s, the United States had become the most productive corn civilization the world had ever seen. Government subsidies and research focused on corn, wheat, and soybeans. Chestnut orchards didn't fit that model, so they were ignored. There were consequences. Annual monocultures leave soil bare between plantings. Each year's plowing releases carbon and destroys soil biology. Erosion strips away topsoil, and chemical runoff pollutes rivers. Dependence on corn led to unintended health impacts. Maize is low in niacin, and when eaten as an unprocessed staple, it can cause pellagra, a disease that plagued the American South and parts of Europe until the 20th century. Today, corn is so ubiquitous that it appears in nearly every processed food, from sweeteners to animal feed. Its overabundance has contributed to diets high in refined carbohydrates and to associated health problems. Meanwhile, the land suffers. Global cropland is dominated by annual monocrops like maize, wheat, soy, and rice. These cover over 1 billion hectares and rely heavily on external energy, fertilizer, and pesticides. The ecological cost includes greenhouse gas emissions, nutrient pollution, soil loss, and biodiversity collapse. Perennial crops comprise only a tiny fraction, around 4% of cropland, even though they often yield as much as annuals and store more carbon. We chose convenience and yields over resilience and diversity. Chestnut trees offer a glimpse of another path. Once established, a chestnut orchard needs little tillage or chemical input. Its roots dive deep, sequestering carbon and drawing up water and nutrients from subsoil. The canopy intercepts rain and reduces runoff, while the root system holds soil against erosion. Each mature tree can produce 50 to 100 pounds of nuts per year, and some can yield more. The nuts keep well when dried and can be ground into flour, pureed, or eaten whole. They are nutritionally similar to brown rice, but supply vitamin C and more fiber than refined grains. Chestnuts are low in fat and sugar, have a low glycemic index, and provide a complex carbohydrate that fuels slow energy release. They can feed people and animals while providing habitat for wildlife and stabilizing the landscape. In agroforestry systems, chestnuts can be grown in alleys between crops or combined with pasture, allowing farmers to harvest from the canopy and the ground simultaneously. They are a crop and a carbon sink in one. The tree is not gone. Chestnuts survive in the fringes of our food system. Hybrid varieties that combine the productivity of Chinese chestnuts with the flavor of American and European species are being planted in new orchards. Nonprofits like silviculture are working to plant 1 million nut trees across the mid-Atlantic United States. Their logic is simple. A chestnut orchard offers a perennial source of protein and carbohydrate that doesn't need replanting every year. A mature chestnut can produce 50 to 100 pounds of nuts annually, retailing for several dollars a pound. Once planted, it provides a valuable, storable food and a revenue stream. For farmers, nut trees diversify income and make land more resilient to climate extremes. Researchers note that chestnut agroforestry sequesters more carbon than annual crops and buffers against flooding. Governments are starting to take note. Reports from agroforestry institutes suggest that broad adoption of chestnuts could help flip the script on agriculture's role in climate change. Meanwhile, scientists are breeding blight-resistant American chestnuts and working to return the species to its native range. Revival is not nostalgia, it is a strategy. Choosing chestnuts is not about rejecting corn entirely. It's about diversifying our food base and embracing perennials that work with ecosystems rather than against them. Planting a chestnut is an act of patience. It may take 7 years to bear, but then it will bear for decades. It is an investment in soil, in water, in climate, and in community. 1 nut tree can feed a family, 10 can feed a neighborhood, 1 million could change how a region eats. In an age of supply chain fragility, a crop that doesn't depend on imported fertilizers or annual reseeding is security. Think about the promises made in politics. a chicken in every pot, prosperity through the yield, salvation through technology. Those promises hinge on systems that are brittle, monocultures propped up by fossil fuels and synthetic chemicals. Chestnuts make a different promise. They do not offer instant results. They offer abundance through time. You plant a chestnut and walk away. Every year it returns a harvest. It asks for soil, water, sun, and time. It gives food, wood, shade, and carbon storage. It doesn't require a king's permission, a corporation's seed, or a machine's straight line. Nature's lost vault is not about romanticizing the past. It is about remembering options we were taught to forget. The bread tree worked. It fed mountain villages, supported wildlife, and built houses. It didn't vanish because it failed. It vanished because it didn't fit the new economics of seeds and steel. But the rules are changing. Climate change, soil degradation, and water scarcity are forcing us to rethink annual monocultures. Scientists are developing perennial grains like kernza, and farmers are experimenting with chestnut orchards. Conservation programs are starting to include perennials. The vault is opening. You can be part of that quiet rebellion. Plant a chestnut tree. If you live in a place where American chestnuts still struggle with blight, plant a blight-tolerant hybrid. In 7 years, you will see the first shiny brown nuts hidden in spiky burrs. Roast them over a fire, grind them into flour for bread, or boil them into soup the way your ancestors did. With each harvest, you'll taste food that grows outside the industrial timeline, food that opts out of annual replanting and chemical dependencies. When the nuts fall each autumn and you gather them by the bucket, you will join a lineage that stretches back centuries. The next vault opens soon. Until then, remember the tree that fed civilizations and let its roots challenge the way we farm.